We should never take impeachment off the table. We should never take where we see law breaking. We should never take accountability off the table.
This nonsense from like AOC that he should be impeached is just absurd. Absurd. There's no... Okay, get back to me when you've read the Constitution or get a law degree, because you sound like an absolute...
Megyn Kelly just dropped a shockwave so intense it felt like the stage turned upside down. This wasn't some small comeback. This was a blast straight out of a blockbuster movie. AOC, normally the center of attention, suddenly looked like she had walked into a blazing storm with nothing but a paper fan to protect herself. And the twist that left the entire room frozen. Nobody expected it for even a second. After this clash, the way people see AOC will never be the same again.
There is absolutely no ground to impeach the president. He 100% was within his constitutional authority and his congressionally authorized authority to do what he did on Saturday. Okay, but as for whether it's a good idea, that's a debate we should be having. And look, you know, if we could get congressional approval of the specific action, fine, I'm okay with that too. If you want to bring it to Congress, go ahead and see how that goes. I don't think it's necessary, but...
Megyn Kelly fixed her attention on AOC, and what followed was anything but calm. It was a full-blown storm, with one side walking in completely unprepared for the hit. Kelly didn't simply point out tiny flaws in AOC's polished public image. She sliced straight through it with the reckless force of a kid cutting into brand new wallpaper.
Check in on AOC and see what she has to say.
Reaction on what's going on with Elon Musk and President Trump on Twitter right now.
Oh man, the girls are fighting, aren't they? I think this breakup we've been seeing a long time coming, but we'll see what the impacts are of it legislatively.
Okay. You're so cool referring to them as the girls. She's above it all, Ben. That's what she's trying to telegraph. You see, she's the adult in the room, the one out there who does a preacher accent, and she leans into her fake Latina accent. And she's the adult in the...
AOC shifted from her usual upbeat Instagram live vibe, laughing with viewers and sipping wine, to standing completely still under Megyn Kelly's sharp stare, looking as stunned as someone who just realized the Wi-Fi password vanished right when they needed it most.
It's the true radical left, who's gone beyond all the identity issues. I mean, don't get me wrong, the person I'm going to show you is 100% wrapped in all of them, but like genuinely believes the Hitler fascist stuff, like is distraught because they really think Hitler just got reelected. Most of them were just pretending, but then there are the ones who genuinely believe it, like AOC.
We are about to enter a political period that will have consequences for the rest of our lives. Donald Trump has talked about turning the military on U.S. citizens that he deems his domestic political enemies.
Here's the plain truth about AOC. Her entire approach runs on pure energy and presentation. There's no steady base of solid facts or detailed plans behind it. It's more like social media theater wrapped in sweeping hand motions. People aren't showing up for deep policy discussions. They're watching because she can turn a quick 30-second clip into something that feels like a TED Talk colliding with a full Broadway performance.
AOC has been out there on this, I don't know if it's campaign trail, I don't know what we're calling it, but this like fight the oligarchy tour with Bernie Sanders, from which, you know, venue to venue, she travels first class, sipping her champagne, you know, in the first class cabin as the losers and plebs walk by to coach. They're the ones she's really fighting for. And she's decided to ramp up her anti-Trump rhetoric in a way she's done before, but that could be deeply problematic for her if Trump actually decides to pay some attention to.
Megyn doesn't rely on drama. She hits with the kind of sharp precision that can make even the most confident politician rethink everything. And that's exactly what happened. AOC walked in expecting her usual routine to win the room. Big gestures, fiery emotion, maybe a clever line comparing climate change to a credit card bill. But Megyn shut it down instantly. She broke apart every argument piece by piece until AOC seemed less like a congresswoman and more like a student scrambling through a last-minute book report. The brilliance of Megyn's takedown was her method. No cheap shots, no flashy moves, just pure focus, solid facts, and logic sharp enough to slice through AOC's points faster than glitter spreading through a laundry load. And the crowd. They weren't just impressed, they were stunned into silence. Watching Megyn calmly strip away AOC's polished image felt like trying to assemble IKEA furniture with zero instructions. And the moment that changed everything, the self-proclaimed voice of the people, known for her charm, certainty, and stylish sneakers, suddenly looked surprisingly ordinary.
Report today that AOC may be getting ready to run for president, that her team is looking, and I know you've said she could potentially do it, but her team is looking at maybe Senate. Chuck Schumer is, I think, going to be 78 when he runs for re-election. That's really old, and the Democrats seem to get that now. Or she might just go for president. And at the same time, this happened today. The Republicans in the House introduced a resolution to honor Charlie Kirk. It condemns the murder and it prays.
AOC's image is managed so tightly it makes an Apple launch look like an open mic night. But Megyn didn't just spot the weak points, she tore them wide open for everyone to see. In seconds, AOC's polished "I'm the future" persona shifted from confident destiny to something that looked more like an audition gone wrong that somehow ended up on C-SPAN. And here's the part that stung the most. It wasn't only about policy. Megyn went after the performance itself, the one element everyone else tiptoed around. While others debated talking points, Megyn pulled back the curtain on the show. The dramatic hand movements, the perfectly timed pauses, the emotional bursts that felt practiced down to the last breath. It was like exposing the Wizard of Oz, only to find someone with a microphone and a fog machine trying to appear larger than life. Once you noticed it, there was no way to unsee it. The reactions were unforgettable. Half the crowd frozen in disbelief, the other half laughing in shock. Somewhere, a Brooklyn barista was probably still trying to defend AOC's brilliance, even as she was getting completely overwhelmed in real time. But the damage was done, the illusion was gone. Megyn revealed the truth. The Emperor wasn't just missing the outfit, she was trying to return it for store credit. And the timing, absolutely perfect. AOC had been thriving on influencer politics, where a quick comeback is treated like real change.
Of course he's lying and abusing and manipulating the stock market too. When he talks about rapists and criminals, he should look in the mirror.
Clearly saying that Donald Trump is a racist. Rapist. She also thinks he's a racist. He's all the ists. But here, she's in deep trouble because he was not found liable for rape. And George Stephanopoulos just had to pay ABC some $15 million to President Trump to settle a defamation lawsuit.
When Megyn called her out, the truth hit like a thunderclap. Comebacks only work when there's real weight behind them. Without that, it's just noise, like political jazz hands waving in the air. And here's the painful part. AOC probably assumed she could spin things the usual way, play the victim, rally her supporters, and throw in a few hashtags. But this time, the entire game shifted. Politicians get challenged on policy all the time, but how often does someone expose the performance behind the persona? That's where Megyn struck the center of the target. She turned AOC's biggest strength, her ability to command attention, into the very thing that unraveled her. Suddenly, the theatrics that once made AOC magnetic now made her look like she was trying far too hard. And in politics, nothing collapses faster than the image of someone who appears desperate. By the end, Megyn didn't just win the exchange. She changed the way people viewed AOC. Because once you realize the so-called voice of the people is essentially auditioning every time she grabs a microphone, it becomes impossible to ignore. It's like discovering your favorite action hero's most iconic stunts were done by a double the entire time.
There's AOC, who said the following.
And beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions of Americans, far from the working tirelessly to promote unity, unquote, asserted by the majority in this resolution.
Then she voted no. She refused to join in the resolution. Consequences to her politically for doing that?
I would love to have her run for president of the Democratic side. It's a contrast, right? What you see is what you get. If that's what you think can lead this country, is that where your values are? Is that what you think will continue to promote American freedom and liberty?
Here's the surprising twist. This wasn't even Megyn operating at full power. This was Megyn on a regular Tuesday, calmly sipping coffee while taking apart a politician like it was just a warm-up. Imagine the chaos if she ever decided to go all in on AOC. At that point, it wouldn't feel like an interview, it would look like a political demolition delivered with a quiet smile. Because when Megyn focuses on someone, the internet refuses to look away. Memes explode across timelines. Late night shows race to write jokes. And frantic staffers scramble to erase the moment. Spoiler, they never succeed. At this rate, AOC's safest move might be to embrace the whole theatrical image, maybe even break into show tunes on the House floor, jazz hands included. At least then, the laughter might be intentional instead of unplanned. But after Megyn's hit, the curtain came crashing down. The illusion cracked wide open, and suddenly people were asking, wait, was this all just a performance? The most shocking part was how fast everything shifted the moment Megyn pulled AOC under that microscope. Just seconds earlier, she seemed untouchable, the internet's golden favorite who could do no wrong.
And the reason this is relevant is because a congresswoman who you may know as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been telling us for years that she is from the Bronx. And recently she had a fight with President Trump over tweet, text, truth, whatever. And she played tough and said, oh, don't you mess with me. I'm a Bronx girl and we eat Queens boys for breakfast, because that's where Trump was raised, in the Queens. And respectfully, AOC. Well, that's real cute, except she only lived in the Bronx until she was age 5.
She could fumble a policy point, twist metaphors into a maze, or toss out dramatic comparisons about billionaires swallowing planets, and the crowd would still cheer like she'd just closed a Broadway show. But Megyn wasn't there to applaud. She broke the illusion, and AOC's confidence seemed to drain away in one long, uncomfortable slide. That's the harsh truth about performance-based politics. It only works as long as the audience buys into the act. And with exact precision, Megyn brought every hidden string into full view. Picture AOC stepping into one of her trademark speeches. The wide eyes, the flawless pauses, the sweeping hand movement slicing through the air like a conductor leading an invisible orchestra. Usually people love it, but this time, with Megyn revealing the routine, every motion looked rehearsed, almost mechanical. It felt like watching a magician repeat the same trick after you already know where the card is tucked away. Impressive once, awkward the next. You could practically see AOC noticing the shift as it happened. Her entire image relies on controlling the atmosphere, the message, and the impact of every carefully planned look and gesture.
The rest of her childhood, 1 through 12th grade, in Yorktown Heights, which is Westchester. And by any measure, it is richer, nicer, and more white collar than the Bronx, with all due respect to my friends in the Bronx. She's pretending to be a Bronx girl because she wants this to be part of her origin story, the same way as she wants now to be called Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Once Megyn stripped that control away, everything started to unravel. Suddenly, AOC didn't look like a fearless leader taking on the world. She looked like a nervous performer losing her lines under a blinding spotlight. Megyn calmly cut through her entire routine, one exaggerated gesture at a time, making the fall even tougher to watch. AOC's strength comes from having clear villains. She needs opponents who seem over the top to keep her fire alive. But what happens when the other person simply smiles and points out that the emperor is standing in an empty room waving jazz hands at no one? There's no dramatic clash at that point, just silence, and the slow fade of credibility slipping away. Her supporters rushed online to defend her, filling Twitter with threads longer than entire novels, twisting themselves into knots, trying to claim she wasn't exposed, that Megyn was unfair, that none of it mattered. But here's the irony. The louder the defense became, the more obvious the damage was. Because if it takes a 42-part thread to prove someone wasn't embarrassed, then they definitely were.
Everyone knew her as Sandy Cortez when she was growing up, and her lies are coming to the fore. So, among other things, Benny Johnson, who's hilarious, and he's a great Twitter follow and has a great show, went to Yorktown Heights just to take a look and to talk to some folks there about AOC and what Yorktown is like and so on. And now some of her schoolmates, separate and apart from Benny, are weighing in on her claims.
Meanwhile, Megyn leaned back and watched the chaos ripple out, likely sipping her coffee like a queen, calmly observing her triumph. That's the magic of a perfectly executed takedown. One clean strike is all it takes if the impact is loud enough. Clips kept replaying, memes spread across every corner of the internet, and with each replay, AOC's performance looked worse than before. It was almost poetic, like a gymnast landing a flawless triple flip only to stumble during the final bow. Nobody remembers the flips, they remember the fall. The reaction across the media was priceless. Outlets that once defended AOC began whispering, maybe she really does rely too heavily on theatrics. Oh, now they see it? After years of dramatic speeches and polished Instagram monologues, it took Megyn blasting a giant neon spotlight on it for everyone to finally say it out loud. The timing couldn't have been sharper. It felt like a crowded theater where everyone pretends to enjoy a bad movie until one bold voice finally says, "Hold on, this is awful," and suddenly the entire audience nods in agreement.
Fourth place, not necessarily fourth place. This is just, I'm going to start with as the fourth possibility, but I've got 4 total and you'll decide what order they go in. I'm going to kick it off with AOC. Okay. Her real name is Sandy Ocasio. This is what she went by her entire life, Sandy Ocasio. And only when she decided to run for office did she decide to suddenly become Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and lean into her Puerto Rican history, where her mother was born in Puerto Rico, but her father was born in New York City. And she decided to tell us sob stories about how she's from a poor family and she was living, paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, she was raised in a Tony part of Westchester called Yorktown Heights.
The memes were the final blow. The internet doesn't care about nuance. It devours punchlines. And Megyn delivered an entire feast. Clips of AOC's sweeping hand gestures were looped over circus music, while her long pauses replayed as painfully awkward silences that made viewers wince. Screens froze her mid-expression with captions like, "Award-worthy drama, zero policy." Once the internet grabs something, credibility isn't just bruised, it's roasted, packaged, and preserved forever. Now every gesture seems practiced. Every pause feels staged. Every emotional moment sounds less like politics and more like an audition monologue. That's when everything split wide open. AOC's carefully built image cracked. Her supporters scrambled to patch it together, and the media finally acknowledged what they'd suspected for years. Meanwhile, Megyn stood steady, the one who pulled the mask off the performance. And here's the twist. This wasn't even a grand showdown. No roaring crowd, no dramatic finale, just the cold realization that the audience was no longer convinced. The wiring behind the act was exposed, the props were visible, and the person in the spotlight suddenly looked like they were trying far too hard. That was the dismantling no one else dared to attempt, until Megyn did.